know. I'm feeling it.
Well, travel? Travel?
I think so. I went yesterday.
Dana, can you talk about Teddy Atlas's comments real quickly about the Floyd Mayweather fight, saying that Victor Ortiz won it out? Do you buy that?
That Victor Ortiz what?
Won it out.
You know what? I was talking to one of my buddies who felt the same way, that you know, the way that Ortiz was acting, that he didn't want to fight anymore. Only he knows that. You know what I mean? I don't know. It was weird. They didn't protest too much after the fight either.
Do you believe the circus atmosphere around Mayweather is good for boxing or bad?
Hey, Floyd sells. I mean, you can say whatever you want about him, but he did 1.3 million buys. That's a big number. And yeah, you know.
Speaks for itself.
Yeah, it is what it is. I think, you know, whether people think he's the best ever and want to see him fight, or people hate him and want to see him get knocked out, they tune in to watch him.
Is there any detail you can give on Belfort being out?
He's our.
I just settled on Vanderlei.
What's that?
How did you wind up picking Vanderlei?
Well, I'm sure you guys know, what I said about Vanderlei after his last fight. You know, Vanderlei was really bummed out about it, but he wants another opportunity. He wants to fight. You know, the guy's been around for a long time. I respect him. He's healthy, so we'll give him the shot.
Did you fight with him much about it, or did you just say, yeah, he will give you one more?
You know, it's one of those things. There's this fine line between, you know, telling a guy you got to hang it up and him actually wanting to hang it up. So give him this fight with Kung Lee, and we'll go from there.
Does he know that that's kind of on the line here in this fight?
Well, he knew going into that last fight how I felt about it. The thing with me is, I love Vanderlei. Vanderlei's been awesome ever since he's come to the UFC. You couldn't ask for a nicer guy, a guy who goes in and gives it all. Listen, I don't want to see anybody get hurt. You guys have heard me say it a million times. I don't want to make $1 of that kind of money. You know, I don't. Otherwise, if that was the case, Chuck Liddell would still be fighting.
Do you feel that way about Matt Hughes as well?
Matt Hughes has been around for a long time. Matt Hughes hasn't taken major punishment, you know. But, you know, people get pissed off every time I say this. People are like, oh, who are you to? Unfortunately for people that don't like it, I am the one who makes those decisions. So whether you like it or not, you're fucking bad.
Do you have a sense of where Hughes is at right now? I mean, he's obviously not commenting publicly on it, but do you get the sense that maybe this could be it? Or?
Well, I get to this point with these guys, and Hughes is the perfect example, and the same thing with Liddell. What's next? Unless you guys tell me you want to go for another run at the title, or, I mean, you look at guys like Hughes and Liddell who have accomplished everything. Vanderlei too. Vanderlei's accomplished everything. What's next at this age? You guys have made a ton of money. You know, Hughes doesn't need to make any more money, believe me when I tell you. The last thing Hughes needs to make more of is money. He's good to go.
His tractors are expensive.
Yeah, they are.
Do you think there are any more fight shots for him?
For Hughes?
For Hughes, yeah. Do you think he's kind of around the
I think that if Hughes beats Koscheck on Saturday night, there is, you know.
Would you put him in with GSP?
There's no way in hell he will retire if he beats Koscheck on Saturday.
Would you put him in with GSP again?
I don't know.
If he kept winning, maybe
I know.
another fight after that? If he runs through everybody.
I think there's guys ahead of Hughes that deserve it.
Yeah.
More than Hughes does. So we'll see.
If Hughes retires, will you keep him in the company like Chuck Liddell?
He's one of those guys that will be Chuck Liddell and stick around.
Do you know what role he would fulfill?
Get paid to do nothing.
There you go. How'd you end up picking Henderson Showdown as the sentencing?
Because I love that fight. It's a great fight, and you know, we were looking for a main event for San Jose, and Henderson wants to get into the title picture. So,
would you say that's a #1 contender's fight?
Yeah, it'd be tough not to give the winner of that fight the next shot.
How were the negotiations?
After we're shot next.
How were the negotiations with Henderson? It seemed pretty quick.
Yeah, it went smooth.
Was there any thought of him going back to Strikeforce, or was it all like,
you know, that's usually up to those guys. You know, he wanted to fight in the UFC.
And with Kung Lee, did his contract expire, or was it like Diaz where you had to get him out of the contract?
I don't know. I don't remember. Kung Lee wanted to fight in the UFC too for a long time. I've been talking to Kung Lee for a long time about it. He then went back and was doing movies again, and he came back and told us he wanted to fight. So.
Then you talked about obviously Strikeforce's future being Showtime's decision, but can you see? I mean, they're losing a lot of their parts, the things that they might like to build around. But do you see any way that they renew and say, yeah, we do want to keep doing this?
It depends on whether they really want to seriously stay in the business, in the mixed martial arts. I'll tell you what, you guys have seen for the last 10 years all these up-and-coming companies that came and do these television deals, and you guys are all saying to me, how come you don't do a network deal? How come you don't do a network deal? What did I say? I said for the last 10 years, because when the right deal comes, you don't just jump on it. Everybody that comes into this business thinks that pay-per-view or free TV is the answer. It's the holy grail. It's the answer to everybody's problems. Bullshit. Either of those two things will put you out of business. And they get into these bad deals with these companies, and next thing you know, you're $30 million in the hole. It's crazy.
Would you classify Strikeforce's deal as a bad deal?
I would classify everybody who's done a television deal out there besides us has done a bad deal. Yes. Everyone.
What kind of viable future do you see for Strikeforce? I mean, most of the champions are gone.
It depends. It depends on whether these guys still want to be in the business or not.
Would you see it as something like maybe scale it down to where Showtime, if they're agreeable to it, run it as like a theater show for you guys and run challenger shows?
I don't think you need to scale it down or run a challenger show. I think you can put on great fights on Showtime if Showtime wants to really be in the business. I mean, if you really want to be in the business, then commit and get in the business. If you don't, then don't.
Then why haven't they committed yet?
Huh?
Well, if they haven't committed yet, why haven't they committed?
Well, there's a deadline on this deal, so we'll see what happens.
What do you think of their last event?
What do I think of it? I didn't see it. Dude, I'm UFC, man. I'm all UFC, and you guys know that. I wanted nothing to do with this thing. You know, I'm with. Plus, it's not like I'm Showtime's best friend. You know what I mean? Lorenzo's much nicer than me. Let Lorenzo go deal with that.
Can you share what that deadline is? Do you know when the deadline is?
Another month, I think. I think it's another month, yeah.
For what? For them to say whether or not they want to
They want to be in the business.
Talk about this fight. Obviously, it's kind of a weird feel. I mean, it's gonna be a huge fight here with the main event, but it's like this quiet tension. Rampage isn't quite as talkative as usually is. Jon is kind of throwing some barbs out there. What do you think about it?
Rampage is pretty miserable right now. We were in the back there. You know, he's pretty nasty for this fight. This is going to be an interesting fight. He hates Jon Jones. He hates him. Feels like he's been disrespected and wants to win this fight. It's good for Rampage. This is what Rampage needs. Rampage needs somebody that motivates him and somebody that, lights a fire under his ass. And Jon Jones has done that.
You talked about this being a breakthrough fight. I mean, do you think these guys could be superstars and Brock Lesnar type level draws?
Well, this is a superstar fight. I mean, I got so many guys from LA and Hollywood and all that shit calling me for tickets to this fight. You know, for people to commit to fly in to Denver from LA or New York or wherever they're coming from. Just that's a real gauge of what a breakthrough fight is.
What other fight are you looking forward to in this card besides Maine and Kobe?
I'm always excited about the whole card. I mean, for instance, last weekend when we were in New Orleans, I hate when this happens, but you know, the undercard was ended up being better than the main card. So that's the great thing about the fights that we put on. The whole card is good. You never know. It's like, again, last weekend when people were talking, oh, these fights suck. You know, when you're on Twitter and all the bullshit on the internet. But you say fights suck before the fights even happen, you know? And there were great fights on the undercard. And that thing called killer ratings. That's the other thing, too, about... I got this theory on the boxing thing where I called Ioli after I got the ratings. You know, we did 1.8 million viewers on that show. I think that when you have these free fights on television, MMA fights and a boxing fight the same night, you can watch both. More people are going to stay home, and you have my thing that I always say is the thing that pisses you off the most. The money sucks, yeah, I get it, but you usually got a bunch of people chipping in with you. It's staying home and seeing shitty fights on Saturday night when you could have done something else. Well, when you have both on that same night, the odds are pretty good that you're going to see some good fights.
Can you talk about Ellenberger, or you go to the press conference after the fight? What were your thoughts on
Yeah, he looked like a stud, man. I mean, he went in, and it's one of those situations where I don't want to take anything away from him because he looked damn good, you know. But was it, you know, did Jake just lost his father a couple weeks before that fight, which can't be easy, and sure he was dealing with a lot of tough stuff, but Ellenberger looked good.
What was Jake like during that week? I mean, none of us really got to talk to him. He was kind of private.
Shields, yeah. When I talked to him, he was upbeat. He was great, and he said, "Listen, my dad would have never wanted me to not move forward and do what I need to do. He wouldn't have wanted it. So I'm going to do what I think my dad would have wanted me to do." That was basically how he felt about it.
Where does Ellenberger stand now in your eyes? I mean, obviously there's a lot of people in that division, but I mean, is he close to the top? Is he in the mix, so to speak?
Jake's a big deal. Yeah, that one put him on the map.
Obviously, you got BJ and Nick coming up. I mean, would you assume the winner of that would be next?
I don't know. I got to see how that whole thing goes down. You know, that's been a fun one. That's been a fun one to deal with.
Have you talked to Nick? Have you guys had any interactions?
Yes, I talked to Nick 2 days ago for an hour on the phone.
How's that going?
It's going good. You know, here's the thing with Nick Diaz, in which I'm not used to, but I'm going to get used to it. He's just a different guy. I'm going to have to handle him and deal with him differently than I do every other guy in the UFC. I'm cool with that.
What's your feeling right now?
I just got to deal with him differently. I don't have to call Matt Hughes every 3 days. I don't have to call Rampage every 3 days. I don't have to talk to these guys, but I do with Nick, and that's cool. I can do that. I think that I can figure this thing out where I can work with Nick Diaz and we can make this happen.
So if he wins and fans are clamoring for that fight still, you feel like you can put faith back in him and put him in that role?
Yeah, you know, it's unfortunate what I had to do in that situation, but I had to do it. For 10 years, 1,600 fights, nobody's ever not shown up for a press conference. And it'd be one thing if there was something wrong or, you know, like the Jake Shields situation. You know, if he hit me and said, I can't make it, I'm dealing with it. Get it, you know, but that's unacceptable. You can't do it.
Are you doing that because that's a mark of respect for you, for him as the type of fighter he is and puts it all on the line? But also that maybe you recognise that there may be a kind of, if I dare say, like a bipolar condition or something that he has to actually deal with?
It's hard. It's hard to figure out.
We're not medical men.
It's hard to figure out with Nick. And a lot of the things, you have to understand the difference between Nick Diaz and a lot of these other guys. Nick has this this mentality, you know, you're not going to disrespect me, and you're not going to do this, and you're not going to do that. He really doesn't give a shit about much. He doesn't care. You know?
I traveled from the UK to San Francisco one day, and he gave me 1 minute and then turned me away. I had to wait 4 hours. I got the interview in the end, though.
Dude, we'll be in the back thing. I'll go up and say hi to him. They'll walk right by him. He doesn't give a shit. He don't care. He doesn't care. So, and it's like I said, it's not that he has to, but you have to play by some of the rules. I'm not asking you not to be yourself or not to do this or that, or come up and say hi to me when you see me. You know, it doesn't matter. But I think I can work with it, and I think we can figure this thing out. I respect him as a fighter. People like to see him fight. You know, no doubt he's got a little nutty side to him, but we'll figure this thing out.
What is it about Nick that makes you work outside of your comfort zone in terms of working with him?
Well, I don't know if I work outside my comfort zone, but you know, it's more. What I'm more worried about are the things that he has to do, like follow the rules that the athletic commission of whatever state we're in lays down. You got to follow those rules. You have to. There's no bending or curving on that. All the other stuff is all. Who cares? You know, the kid's a fighter. I mean, seriously, it's great, and we've talked about this before. When you got a guy who's funny like Rampage, who speaks as nice as Jon Jones does, and the list goes on and on. But at the end of the day, Nick Diaz isn't showing up to give some big speeches, and he's not performing in front of it. He's coming to fight, and that kid shows up to fight. So that's all I ask of him. I told him, listen, you have to show up at a press conference. You can sit there and don't say a word. If people ask you questions, don't even answer them if you don't want to. You have to show up. You have to be there. You know? So we'll see what happens.
Dana, you were very vocal about what happened in the boxing match this past weekend. You made your point regarding boxing. Talk about MMA. In your opinion, what's the biggest issue with MMA judging and MMA refereeing?
It's a problem in both, in MMA and in boxing. I mean, realistically, when you look at it, boxing puts on 2 big fights a year. 2 big fights a year. They fucked up one of them. The referee destroyed that fight. Destroyed it. First of all, his job in there is to make sure, and Floyd and this kid Floyd was strangling him at the press conference, the weigh-ins. Nobody did anything. And they all got 40 guys standing up on stage. You don't think that Ortiz lays in bed at night after that happened and thinks about that he just choked me in front of the whole world on television? And if he would have slapped his hand down or pushed him or whatever, a whole war would have broken out there with all those people. You know, these officials and all these people that are regulating the sport.
Are you talking boxing?
Yeah, boxing and MMA. It's the same thing. There's no difference. You know, I saw some of the knuckleheads on the internet and on the Twitter going, yeah, well, what about yours? Your guys are screwed. It's the same guys. Yeah, there might be different referees that do this, but it's the same thing. We're all governed by the same athletic commissions and the government in each one of these states. Now, when two boxers go in there like Floyd and Ortiz, yes, dirty things are going to happen. Sometimes, you know, for instance, Ortiz was headbutting from the first round on. He was rubbing his head in his face and doing everything, and the referee never took control of that fight. Then, and it's easy, like I said yesterday, it's easy to hate Floyd Mayweather. You know, it's easy to hate him and to point the finger at him. Floyd didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. Floyd didn't act like a thug. Floyd didn't do, you know, anything that Floyd could have done. So he gets intentionally, flagrantly headbutted in the face. And the referee actually lets Ortiz walk up to him and grab him again after he does it. That's insane. Okay, so he goes up, he hugs him, he kisses him, he apologizes, and says all this stuff. Never takes control, never sends a guy to a neutral corner, never sends the doctor in to look at Floyd and make sure Floyd's okay to continue. Never gets up. First, the other thing, too, this guy has supposedly has reffed 100 and however many fights, I'm exaggerating, but he's done all these fights, and HBO uses this thing as like a badge of honor. He's done 150 world championship fights. Well, that might be too many fights, man. It might mean that this guy's too old to still be refereeing, you know? And how does the guy not know that an intentional flagrant foul is 2 points, not 1? So then he never separates the guy, never sends him to a neutral corner. Then, you know, normally what he does is he says 2 points, 2 points, 2 points to all the judges, right? Then he walks over to the corner and talks to Ortiz and says, you just lost 2 points. If you do that again, you're going to be disqualified. He doesn't do any of that stuff. So then he allows Floyd and him to get back together without, well, what he should do is go, you ready? You ready? Let's fight. And the fight's back on so both guys know that they're about to fight. I mean, they hugged him. So my point to this whole thing is, this couldn't have been more fucked up. I mean, it's the worst thing I've ever seen. And the other point, there's only 2 big boxing fights a year. And that was a multi-million-dollar fight that this one guy destroyed. Because I don't know about you guys, but I was watching a fight. I would have liked to have seen how that really would have ended.
But in regards to MMA, I mean,
the solution is that the athletic commissions really need to start working harder. Especially as this, and what I said yesterday at the press conference is, the last thing that I want to have happen is that, to me, on Fox, on my first big fight, when everybody tunes in, and we're pulling these numbers, is have a referee blow this whole thing.
Are you saying that they need an overhaul, they need to come into the modern world?
I've been saying it for friggin' 10 years.
What's stopping them?
It's getting worse.
What's stopping them?
I don't know, man.
What do you think of the...
Is it a closed shop?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Something needs to be done, though. You know, it's like, and you know how easy it would be for me to come up here and go, boxing and shot itself in the foot again, because that's what everybody was saying that night. But it's not true. When you really look at what happened, boxing didn't shoot itself in the foot. And if you want to, you know, and I bet on Ortiz, just so you guys all know. I bet on Ortiz.
I think it was good money.
I think, exactly. I threw some money. I said, he's got a puncher's chance to see what happens. So, what happens is, boxing didn't shoot itself in his foot. And Floyd, again, you want to rip Floyd and hate Floyd and everything else, Floyd was going after him. Floyd was aggressive. Floyd was throwing punches. Floyd was throwing punches with bad intentions to try to stop the fight. And I think, honestly, there's nothing dirtier in boxing than being headbutted. It's the dirtiest thing you can do. You know, a guy said to me yesterday, what about a punch to the nuts? Yeah, it sucks to be punched in the nuts, but headbutts can cut you, break your nose. You know, lots of things happen from headbutts. You can get a concussion from a headbutt. It's the worst thing you can do in boxing. And it was just, I'm saying, it needs to be fixed, man. They need to fix this. They need to start working with these referees. And if you've done 150 world championship fights, you're probably too old to be reffing anymore. Get a young guy in there who's excited and kind of nervous and wants to do the right thing and actually fucking reads the rules and knows what's supposed to happen if an intentional headbutt happens. And the list goes on and on. It's an embarrassment.
Bigger issues with judging or refereeing?
It's everything. We've seen it all. Here's the thing. When you look at UFC fights, we do 30-something fights a year. So you really see it all the time with us. You see when there's bad ref stoppage, when there's bad judging, and all these other things. Boxing has 2 big fights a year that everybody gives a shit about. That's it. It's all they care about. And it's not like anything bad's going to happen in a Klitschko fight. The fucking Klitschkos don't do anything. You know what I mean? I mean, that's all they do for 12 rounds. It's not like anything crazy is going to happen in a Klitschko fight. But when you're in a fight with these smaller guys, and guys are going at it like they were the other night, and there's some heat and some bad blood, you have to have a guy in there that actually takes control of the fight. Plus, he's there for the safety of the fighters. I think Ortiz made $2.5 million for that fight. Dude, Floyd's getting paid $40 million a fight. $40 million a fight, this guy, and he's on the brink of the biggest fight of his life, and one of the biggest fights in boxing history. And the ref is allowing this guy to headbutt him from the first round on. It's fucking embarrassing, man. And then Larry Merchant, this guy always jumps in there and is always saying bad stuff about people. And he's attacking Floyd about the punch. Well, how about the headbutt? If you want to ask Floyd a question right off the bat, ask him about the headbutt. This guy's always, I mean, it's my big beef with Merchant for years. These guys get done fighting and he jumps in the ring and just starts saying off-the-wall, weird, rude shit to these guys. Who the hell would want to do an interview with him? Probably the thing they dread worse than training and cutting weight and everything is their interview with Larry Merchant. It's ridiculous.
What would you do? Like, he said to Floyd, if I was 50 years younger, I'd kick your ass. Like if someone threatened Rogan like that post-fight, and Rogan would say that back.
Yeah, I thought that was. I actually thought that was very embarrassing for HBO. That he said the guy's senile, he's out of his mind. You know, he's up there berating Floyd, but Floyd can't say anything back to you. You've been disrespecting guys your whole career, and guess what? You can go back 60 years. You're not kicking Floyd's ass, okay? Give me a break. And what's Floyd going to do? A 102-year-old guy just said that to him, you know? I'm actually, and I'm the first one to go out and smash Floyd, you know? I'm always, because I think Floyd should take this fight. Never mind, Manny Pacquiao's never tested positive for anything, okay? You're not the Athletic Commission, Floyd. Who are you to start demanding all this other stuff, right? But I got to be honest. I think Floyd handled himself very well that night. You know, it's just so easy to hate him that everybody wants to point the finger at Floyd.
Do you think Floyd's going to keep backing out of this fight with Pacquiao because I think he beats Pacquiao, but does he really psychologically deep down not want to risk losing that unbeaten record?
I think
Do you
so.
think it'll happen?
I don't know. I mean, I think if it does, it tarnishes his whole career. I think it'll be if
he doesn't take
it'd be horrible for his career if he doesn't take the fight.
It'll go down in history as the fight that shouldn't be.
Yep.
Was.
Dana, when Jon Jones won the title, you made a comment that now's when the real test begins. Now we find out what this kid's made of. In your opinion, what have you seen in the interim since then?
Well, all the big guys are gunning for him now. That's why I always talk about Anderson Silva. I mean, look how long this guy's had the belt, fought the absolute best in the world all this time, and has beat everybody. And for the odds to be so, I mean, seriously, all of us sitting here today, all the media and all the guys who have been involved in this sport for as long as we have, do you honestly think that Rampage is a 5-1 underdog in this fight? That's crazy. I can't even wrap my brain around that one. Rampage is nasty, and he's motivated, he's in shape. And the other thing, he's been here for months. He's been in Denver training, acclimating for months. I mean, it makes no sense to me. But here's the thing, and I have a problem with Jon Jones' place. Jon Jones is my champion, okay? So I should be saying, yes, this, that. People have him ranked number 3 pound for pound in the world. How do we? There's no way. Fucking people are still arguing about Anderson Silva being number 1. The guy hasn't lost in how many years and has had the title this whole time, but people will still, we think Georges St-Pierre. It's fucking crazy. But I don't believe in his position on the pound for pound. Frankie Edgar really is a 145 pounder and has beaten everybody at 155 pounds, including BJ Penn twice. He should be higher in the rankings on the pound for pound. The questions will be answered over the next year. He's going to take out Rampage if he does, and let me tell you what, if he beats Rampage the way that he's beat everybody else, he's on his way. He's still got Rashad out there. He's got to beat Rashad. You know, there's tough guys in that 205-pound division. In a year, we'll know where Jon Jones sits.
Do you have the insight into behind the scenes? Because you mentioned, hey, when guys become champion, now they got hangers on and people around them, and now are they working as hard as they were? Do you have any insight into?
Nah, it hasn't been that way with him. I haven't got that feeling from him. It seems like his life, like you said today, is still pretty normal. He's still doing the same thing he was doing before.
What do you make of the criticism from Jones about Rampage that his game has stagnated? It's basically been the same for a few years.
Yeah, I think that Rampage went through this thing. After we filmed that season of The Ultimate Fighter, that's really where this whole thing started. When he went and did the movie instead and, you know, showed up to fights not in shape. You know, his fight with Matt Hamill, I think people are looking at too. So, yeah, if you look at what, this is one of the things that people go, if you look at his fight with Matt Hamill and you look at what Jon Jones did to Matt Hamill.
Or Alexander Gustafsson too.
This is a completely different Rampage, though. Rampage is in shape. He's motivated. Again, we'll be talking. We'll be in the same situation on Saturday night here. And if he just did to Rampage what he's done to everybody else, it'd be very impressive.
Would you let him go to heavyweight?
He's eventually going to be a heavyweight.
But as a light
He's
heavyweight
so young.
champion, would you let him moonlight? No.
Would you like to see him fight 4 times a year, though, if he does continue to go through that group of guys?
Yeah, I don't think he could fight 4 times a year. Shit, I'd like it. That'd be great for me. I don't think he'd like it.
You mentioned
We could do 3 times a year. We could get him 3 fights a year.
You mentioned Frankie Edgar, and obviously he's got the fight with Gray Maynard coming up. The lightweight scene's changed a lot since their last fight. You know, you had Anthony Pettis waiting, but now you've got a different cast of guys. Is there really a clear #1 guy at lightweight? When you've got Melvin Gillard, Blake Weeda, and Anderson?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, you know, Gray Maynard deserves this next fight. We'll get this thing out of the way. In my opinion, if he can keep his head together because he's such a nutball, you know, Melvin Gillard is very nasty at 155, you know? But the problem with Melvin is, the problem he's had for years, and hopefully he can keep that under control, is, you know, season 2 of The Ultimate Fighter, okay? If you guys remember that, he ended up losing the fight and was out of the house, and we sent people to another house then. He was out in Vegas acting like he was Anderson Silva. Like he's been the longest reigning champion ever, and, you know, he's always had this problem with getting ahead of himself. If he can control himself and focus and keep training and stay serious, I think Melvin Gillard is a force to be reckoned with, man. That kid is nasty. He's explosive, he's fast, he's talented. I don't know. The head problems with him are the thing that makes me question whether he can get that title and keep it.
So what does he have on your plan for the next
So what does he have to do to prove himself to you? That you can trust him?
Well, it's not that I can trust him. He's going to have to do it himself. He's going to have to get out there. And like I said, since he's been with the Jackson camp, it seems like he's in a much better place. But I don't know. We'll see, man. He's just one of those guys that went crazy before he was even on TV. You know. So what's he going to act like when he wins the title? Because when you win the title, your life becomes very, very crazy.
Dana, just to be 100% clear, going back a little bit, Diaz, what he did will not prevent him from being in the main event in the future.
We'll see. I'd like to do that fight. If they both win, I'd like to do that fight. We'll see what happens.
And what you just said, when you win a title, a lot is asked of you. Does that kind of come into as a concern with Nick, where if he does win the title, then we're going to have to ask him?
What I can't do is I can't look at this guy and say, what if he wins? What if God forbid, he beats Georges St-Pierre and he wins the title? Dude, that's my job. I got to put the best in with the best. If he wins, I'm going to have to figure out how to deal with him. It's like I'm going to have to figure out how to deal with Melvin. Any of these other guys. There's always, there's always going to be issues with guys and always things to deal with, and that's my job and that's what I have to do.
Did you ever get a little bit more of an explanation as to why he actually did miss those? I mean, did he explain that?
It's very clear why he missed it. Missed it because he didn't want to go. Missed it because he didn't want to go. He's fought in these smaller organizations where the inmates run the asylum, and if he's fighting in Strikeforce before we owned it and doesn't show up for a press conference, what's Scott Coker going to do to him? Pull him out of the main event? Hell no, that would never happen in a million years. But when you come over here, it's a whole nother ballgame, man. You don't run this show, I do. And I'm going to make decisions sometimes that are, that make the fans not too happy and piss people off here and there. But if you're going to run your business, you got to do what you got to do.
Have you gotten a huge backlash? We know he has loyal followers, but does he have a ton of them? I mean, have you gotten
I think for that one, a lot of people understood. But yeah, there were a lot of people going, well, when it really turned and when people were really pissed was when I put him in the co-main event. Wait a minute. You yank him off the main event, and now you put him in the co-main event? The kid wanted to fight, but he didn't like all the things that go along with fighting in the main event. So, okay, we'll put you in the co-main event, and we'll ease you into this thing. He showed up for his interviews for the for the Countdown show the other day after we heard he wasn't gonna. That was the night I talked to him for an hour.
Yeah.
And, you know, I believe, and maybe I'm a little goofy here, but I believe that I have a good rapport with this kid and that he and I can work together.
How close were you to cutting him? Was there a serious conversation, or was it pretty much right away, we're going to give him at least another shot to him?
Well, you know, this thing was, if you guys remember the press conference, I was like, you know, we're taking him out of this main event. Carlos Condit gets a shot now. And they're like, well, what are you going to do with BJ? I said, well, I'm thinking about something crazy right now. If I told you what I was thinking about, you'd think I was nuts. I was thinking about putting Nick in that fight. He didn't want to, I knew he couldn't deal with that main event slot at this point in time. He couldn't do it. So let's try the co-main event and see how he does with that. And that whole thing's been weird too. I mean, it's just been between him and BJ, and, you know.
So you're saying you're not telling BJ what to say?
What we do is we go out there and we interview these guys. So, do you want to? Are you going to beat Nick Diaz? Are you going to win this fight? How are you going to win? What do you think? There's no difference in the questions you guys ask. You know what I mean? We got to interview these guys. They have to be entertained. It's what we do for a living. This is our business. And you know, sitting there and getting these guys to answer questions like pulling teeth some of the time. Some guys are great. Some guys are tough to do and tough to interview. You know, but our job is to tell both sides of the story and kind of let you know how this fight's going to turn out. And again, say what you want about Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather's going in this huge fight. He's got these cameras living in his house. They're around him. It's called 24/7 for a fucking reason. These guys are around him 24/7 in his cars, at the gym, at his house, private stuff. Floyd Mayweather sells fights. That's what he does. He's on there to give people access to see who he is and how he lives and what he does. You know? And we got BJ saying he doesn't want to say, I'm not going to say I want to beat Nick Diaz. What the fuck? Are you going to lose to Nick Diaz? Then fucking say that. I'm going to lose to Nick Diaz. It's going to kill me. He's going to beat my ass. If that's the way you feel, then fucking say that. Jesus Christ.
Hey, Dana, you talked earlier about Jon Jones' ranking being a little high, you know, prematurely. A lot of people are saying...
In the pound for pound.
In the pound for pound, of course. A lot of people are now turning and saying he's the guy that needs to fight Anderson Silva, not the GSP Anderson Silva fight that's been talked about for so long. Well, where do you stand on that?
What's stupid about that is there's a lot of guys he needs to beat at 205 before he gets... If you look at a guy like Anderson Silva, and if you talk about a pound for pound fight, Georges St-Pierre has dominated the 170-pound division for a long time. Anderson has dominated the 85-pound division for a long time. Jon Jones is just getting started. This is his first title defense. You know? It's crazy to start talking like that.
Is Diaz Gomi still on his card?
Yeah.
Yes.
What happens to the loser athlete?
You know, with me, it always depends on how the fight goes. If it's an absolute knockdown, drag him out war, and these guys deliver, I don't know. We'll see.
So if Gomi has a good performance, what do you think?
Could do, yeah.
Dana, with Ellenberger finishing Shields and Hardy being finished by Lytle and Condit, there are some who are suggesting that Georges St-Pierre may be fighting safe or risk-averse. How do you feel about that argument?
You know, does Georges St-Pierre fight like he fought back in like BJ Penn versus GSP 1? You know, no, but I don't tell guys how to, no, I have nothing to do with their training or their camp or their strategy or how they fight.
Is it a fair criticism?
Let me put it to you this way. Georges St-Pierre is by far the biggest pay-per-view star in mixed martial arts.
Bigger than Lesnar?
By far. By far. The biggest pay-per-view star.
2-1 on Lesnar?
Big. By far the biggest pay-per-view star in MMA. So, for what it's worth, you know, people want to say he's this or that. He's the biggest pay-per-view star by far in MMA. What's that? 5 rounds.
Every main event, no matter what. Even on TV, even like on the fight night.
Yeah, well, that's what we want to do, yeah. That's the plan.
Good.
Good? Good, guys? Thanks. All right.